All right, so first of all, what is a triad? Well, a triad is 3 notes, tri meaning 3. It's 3 notes. And in our case, what we're dealing with here are the 3 notes that make up or comprise prime chords, like a major chord or a minor chord. Those are the 2 really big ones. And then the other one we're going to talk about a little bit as well in this course is the diminished chord, okay? So understanding what that is, what they are, what notes we're talking about, what intervals we're talking about, and how to see those on our fretboard and how, again, to interact with those things. So in our case, you may or may not know your theory, and that's okay if you find you need to study theory a bit more to understand some of the things I'm going to be talking about. I do offer various different guitar courses that deal with theory that could answer these questions. So if you feel the need, that is definitely something that you might want to take a look at. So what we're dealing with right now are the root, the major third, and the perfect fifth. The root, the third, and the fifth of a major scale. That's what we're looking at right now, okay? And then we'll also be looking at minor chords that use the root, the minor third, and the perfect fifth. And then if you know anything about your theory, in a major scale, a diatonic scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, the 7th chord is what we call diminished. And a diminished chord is comprised of the root, the minor third, and a flatted fifth. Now, if you don't know what that stuff means, don't let it freak you out. It's just understanding that when I play something like a G chord, this G chord is major. When I play an A minor chord, okay, this A minor chord is, of course, minor. If I play something with that flatted fifth in there, I'd be playing more of a diminished kind of sound. So again, you might know what those mean. I'm not trying to weird you out with it. I just want you to understand that the bulk of what we're going to be talking about in this course is going to be based off major and minor chords because that's really what makes the musical world go round. But I do want to include diminished as well because it might be something that you find beneficial on a number of different levels. So let's just, before we get started in all of this stuff, let's just look at this. Let's just look at like a G chord. Let's say I was playing your typical standard G 3-finger chord here. Okay? So when I play that G chord, you might be thinking, well, why do I need to learn intervals or why do I need to learn triads if I can just play the chords? Well, it's nice to know what's going on inside that thing that you're playing. You know, we as guitar players oftentimes learn how to play a lot of shapes and things like that, but we don't always know what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so we're leaving a lot of our abilities to chance, just hoping that whatever we're playing over things are going to work. Or, you know, a lot of times we think about, you know, improvisation, which is just moving around randomly and whatever. But I think for most elevated guitar players, there's a lot of knowledge or understanding how things work. Now, again, that might be a visual thing. It might be a theory thing. There's a lot of different ways you can approach this stuff, but knowing how to handle the situation that you're in musically with confidence, that's kind of the trick here. And so I don't find that triads are overly obnoxious or difficult or anything like that, which is why I wanted to make this course on it. I think there's a lot of really usable stuff here that really isn't that hard. It just takes a little bit of your time and some patience. So if we take a look at this G chord and we think about the G chord on its own, the G triad, a G chord contains the notes G, B, and D. That's what a G chord is doing. But when we play this chord, we're playing 6 strings. So what are we doing? Well, if we look at this, we have G, B, and D, and then G, B, and D again. Okay, that's what we have going on there. So G, B, D, G, B, and then, G on the bottom, not D, G on the bottom. So what's happening here is we got 3 different Gs, we got a couple of Bs, we got a couple of Ds, or if I went to this G bar chord right here, I'd have G, D, G, B, a D, and then G again. So again, a host of Gs, a host of Ds, and a B in there. What we want to do is understand why what we're doing is working or isn't working, instead of just randomly dealing with 6 strings all the time or 5 strings or whatever, and hoping that what we want is somewhere within the context of that shape. So with a triad, what we're going to do is we're going to laser focus. We're going to target in on the root, the third, and the fifth, that G, that B, and that D. And I'm talking in terms of G because in this course, we're going to be dealing with the key of G, the chords of G, and that certainly includes the G major chord. All right. So just kind of understanding that. So that's where I always used to get confused, is when I would make chords, I never knew what I was doing. And I would make these chord shapes and there were all these notes in there. And then I would see other players that weren't using these big, what we'll call block chords, like a big G chord or a big D chord. They were just doing things where they're going. And we could look at those things as chord fragments, smaller pieces of these bigger chords, but more importantly is what's going on with them and how are they working. Because that way, when we are in a musical situation, we see these various chords, we can decide, do we want to play them as bigger block chords or do we want to play them as smaller chords? What register do we want to play them in? Do we want to play them lower or higher? Do we want to play them all over the fretboard, or do we just want to kind of compile everything into one place on the fretboard? There's a lot of really amazing things you can do by learning where your triads are. All right, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to break down the fretboard in groups of 3 strings. So we get our root, our third, and our fifth, and they exist on separate strings. Okay, so we're going to do the first, second, third strings, and then we're going to move to the second, third, fourth, fifth, and then fourth, fifth, and sixth. That's how we're going to approach this. So what we want to do is let's just take a chord like the G major chord, and let's look at it on the first, second, and third strings. And what we want to do is we want to find our groups of root, third, fifth in various different places. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to try and place my root, which is G, because I'm on a G chord, as the lowest note. Well, the lowest string I'm using right now is the third string, because I'm going to use 3, 2, and 1 at this point. So G is going to be my lowest one. Well, there's G right there. But in order for you to see what we're doing, what I'm going to do is take that G, I'm going to move up to the 12th fret. So G, octave G. So there's my G. Now, the root, third, fifth, root, major third, perfect fifth, would be G, B, and D. So I need to find my B, which is right here. It's underneath on the 12th fret. And then D, my fifth, would be located at the 10th fret of the first string. Now, as we listen to that, we're hearing the root, major third, perfect fifth. And oftentimes when you're learning these sorts of things, just take some time to listen. Take some time to look, okay? So first listening, if we listen to the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's our notes right there. Root, third, fifth. If we visualize this, what I want you to realize, and I'm going to try and show you as many shortcuts, if you want to call them that, as I possibly can, by looking at different ways of seeing this stuff on your fretboard and relating it to something you might already know. So what we're really doing right now is we're taking a 5th string bar chord, which is the A shape, if you know your cage chording system. And again, if you don't, it's okay. But it's your 5th string bar chord. That's where this is coming from. So root, third, fifth. Okay? That means if you wanted to play a C chord, for instance, as long as you could find your 5th string bar chord, you could look at these first 3 strings and go root, third, fifth. Okay? So if you heard somebody play this C chord, instead of just doing that, you could go, okay, I think I want to emphasize the third. And you could find it. Okay? So there's 2 things happening here with each one of these. There's the terminology of the intervals, root, third, fifth, and then there's the notes, C, E, G, or in the case of G major, it's G, B, D. Okay? So the easiest way to think about that is just count up on your fingers, G, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, G. Now that's not always going to work because some keys have sharps and flats, but again, I'm not going to get all crazy with that. But just understand that. So when I'm playing this, and you can always look at your fretboard and figure out your notes too. But, so G, B, and D. Right there. Finding it off the 5th string bar chord of the A shape of the cage system. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is find one, these same notes, but they're going to wind up being in a different order. And we call that an inversion. Okay? So for instance, right now I'm playing all 3 notes and they're in proper order. G, B, D. Root, third, fifth. Well, watch this. If I move down, I could move up, but I'm going to move down and make this a little bit easier to see. If I move down here to the 6th string bar chord, which is the E shape, if you know what that is. And I look at the first three strings, I see this. Let's look at what I'm playing there. I'm playing the notes B, G, and B, D, and G. Sorry about that. So B, D, G. Okay? So right there as I'm playing that, I notice that they're out of order. I have my third, my fifth, and my root, but my root is down here now. Where up here, my root was the lowest note, my B was the middle note, and my D was the highest note. Now all of a sudden I've got B here as the lowest note, and then D, and then G on the bottom. Okay, it's the highest note, if you will, not the lowest note. So what's happening here is we've switched the order. We call this an inversion. Okay, this is what people refer to as the first inversion, if you've ever heard that term before. First inversion simply means that the third is now the lowest note of that root third fifth. The third is the lowest note. Okay? That doesn't change anything, but it is nice to know because when I go to play this, I know this is my third. I know this is B. And again, there might be a host of other ways you know that by knowing all the notes on your fretboard or whatever it might be. And this is just going to reinforce that logic that you might already have. If you don't already have that logic, you've been introduced to a new idea. Okay? So there's my third, my fifth, and my root. B, D, and G sitting right there. Okay? So what do we call this then? Since all those are in proper order, we call this the root position. Okay? So this is root position. It's normal. This are the same notes, but we're going to call this the first inversion. Okay? That makes sense. So it's still root third fifth, but the third is the lowest note now. So we have third, fifth, root. Okay? And the next one we're going to learn is right here. Now this is going to look like a D chord. If you know your cage system, I'm playing the D shape. If you don't, you're just going to have to understand that what I'm doing is taking the D chord, moving up D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G. So I'm moving right here. And when I play this shape, now all of a sudden, I've got the fifth, the root, and the third. So if we think about that, okay, I have D, G, and B. So it's the same three notes again, but they're in a different order. Now the fifth is the lowest note. So we call this a second inversion. So when people refer to second inversion, what they're saying is the fifth is now the lowest note. Okay? So root, third, fifth, root, fifth, root, third. That's what's happening. So with those three shapes, we can start learning how to maneuver around the fretboard and become aware of this. And again, I want to keep reminding you to think about two things. Think about the intervals and think about the notes. And just get it straight in your head. Don't be in a hurry. Just think about the intervals. Think about those notes. Root, third, fifth. G, B, D. Third, fifth, root. Right? B, D, G. Here we've got our fifth, root, third. D, G, B. Okay? And just kind of roll that through your brain. Now, if we step back out, we take a little bit of a larger view of this, we're seeing a fifth string bar chord, which is giving us the root position. We see the sixth string bar chord, which is giving us the first inversion. And then we see the D shape right here, which is giving us the second inversion. Okay? So just trying to get used to that. And what I recommend is just getting used to being able to move around. Like you might do something like this. And you can move up. Not that I'm probably going to play it that high, but it is there. So as I'm seeing this G chord, I can visualize and think, well, if I just played, for instance, the root position, okay? And remember, if you can kind of see this one, even though it's at the 12th, the 10th and 12th frets here, because I don't have enough space down here, but if I can see that one as the root position, as the first one, the primary one, then my first inversion and my second inversion follow along. All right, so the next step is let's start creating some parameters to try and follow. So I've made a track here that is E minor, D major, C major, D major. So again, it's in the key of E minor, which is the same as the key of G major in terms of its chords and the notes we're using, all that sort of thing. So we're not leaving the key of G major. We're just focusing on E minor, D, C, D. So if you know anything about modes, this would be E Aeolian or E natural minor. Okay? And if you don't sweat it. You're just doing the same thing we've been doing. The only difference now is we're going to look at this from two different perspectives. We're going to look at this both from a rhythmic perspective, a chordal perspective, and we're also going to look at this from a solo builder perspective. So let's start with the chord perspective first, okay? So again, if you think in your head, how do you normally play E minor, D, and C? And you might come up with, E minor and D and C, and there's perfectly fine. No, D major. Or you might do E minor and D and C, or E minor, D, whatever it is that you do. Let's start using our triad logic to start thinking about some unique voicings that we could do with some of these chords through these triads and arpeggios that we've been studying, right? So if we think about it, we can just pick a spot to go to. Let's say we do this. Like what I would do is I would choose this one, for instance. I would go down to this E minor that I've got sitting right there, and I might do something with that, but let's use this shape right now. Okay, so if you look at that, what are we playing? What note is this? It's G, B, and E, right? So our G is on top, so think about that. Okay, so G, B, and E, so E, G, B, right? Okay, so there's our chord sitting there. First inversion. Okay, that would be E minor. Now we know that D is coming up, so what do we want to do? Well, the trick here is when you're using these ideas, kind of fragmented chords, if you will, is trying not to move a lot. Because what I always tell people is when I think of like E minor, D, and C, and there's nothing wrong with doing that at all. As a matter of fact, that's what I did on the track when I made it for you. But what we're doing is we're adding another level to this. And again, I always think of this as this kind of playing, these kinds of chords are things that I do when I play in church. Most of the time when I play in my bands, they're usually heavy bands and I'm doing a lot of power chords and crazy stuff like that. But when I play in church, I'm doing a lot of this kind of stuff. Why? Because I'm playing with another guitar player, and that other guitar player more than likely is doing, open chords or bar chords or something like that. And that's great. Somebody needs to hold that down. But because somebody's already doing that, I'm looking for another voicing. That's my job. So I'm going to think E minor is sitting here. Okay, and what's really nice about that smaller triad voicing is that it's not fat, it's not thick, right? It's right to the point, so you can really hear those notes. And sometimes I might even play just the outsides of that shape. Right? It just depends. Okay? Anyway, so the next chord we've got is D. So then I'm thinking to myself, well, where could I go? Well, I could go up here. So now I've got this upper movement. Okay? Or I could go, and I could go to D down here. You see that? So what do I got? F sharp, A, and D. Right? So I could go there if I wanted to. So it just depends on what kind of voicing I'm looking for. Well, then we've got C coming up, right? Now, I could take this same shape and move it down, which would wind up being like your C chord down here. But again, I'm not trying to make something that sounds quite that kind of parallel. So what I would do is I would take my E minor and move down. And then this is maybe where I'd come up to this C. And then I could go back down to this D or go up to this D. So let's look at a couple of different ways we could do this. So E minor, D, C, to D. Keep it all closed like that. Or maybe I go, and then, so it raises it at the end. There's this elevation in pitch at the end, okay? Or maybe I'll go E minor to D, and then C, and then D down here. That might be kind of cool, all right? So E minor, D, what if we went to C here, and then D up here? And now we've got this elevation happening where we're moving up. So we're moving from E minor, to D, and then C, and then to D. Well, that gets me thinking about another idea. So now what I could do is maybe instead of starting down here with my E minor, I start thinking of somewhere else I could go. Well, I know I've got an E minor right here. And again, I'm just on the second, third, and fourth strings for our example right now. I like playing these voicings on those strings because it's not too high and it's not too low. It's kind of right in the center, and it works quite well for voicings for an alternate guitar part, okay? But you can see now I could have the same idea. So E minor to D, to C, to D, and the whole thing could descend, and that could sound kind of cool. You see, it doesn't always have to be a system where you're going E minor, D, C, D, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying you can step outside that and start thinking, well, D is here, but D is also here. Or maybe I go E minor, and then I want D. Now that drops the voicing, right? So what if I wanted to go higher? E minor, okay? I could come up here to D. And then what do I want to do for C? Well, I could drop down, right? But maybe I don't want to drop down. Maybe I want to come up here, and then D, I could elevate that, or maybe go to a different voicing entirely. Now this one's more of a power chord voicing because there's no third in there. So I'm playing 12, 14, and 15. But I'm just saying it's available to me, right? I could be thinking about that. Or maybe I wanted to drop back down. So maybe I go E minor to D, to E minor, and then back down to D, or maybe I move it up. It's entirely up to you, but it's just something to think about a little bit. So as this track is playing, what I want you to do is just try a few different fragments. And I love to do this with students where I just have them try and play things. And again, you might have to push stop and just work with this a little bit until you get used to it. Don't expect that this is all new and your brain is just going to attach it and you're all of a sudden going to be able to use it. But the more you practice this, the easier it's going to get, right? So when the music starts, you might do something. You see, and you can do whatever you want, just practicing those sorts of things. So don't just think of this course as something where you're learning how to solo. That's absolutely valid. But you can definitely use this stuff in your rhythm playing. And I find that with most players, the more you learn about to see these shapes and be able to use this stuff rhythmically, this stuff all changes your perception of how you're going to solo too, right? Because as you're looking at this stuff, you're seeing this E minor sitting here thinking, and then here comes your D. Probably should play that. And then C. And then D. You know, whatever it is we're going to be doing. So the more you can visualize this stuff, the easier it's going to get. Okay? So let's talk about that for a second. So now we've got this E minor, D, C. We're going to talk about the soloing part. E minor, D, C, D. So before we jump into what I just did, let's just start real basic and start developing our understanding of this harmony of, in this case, E minor would be E, G, and B. Okay? So over this E minor, I've got E, G, B, that I can play. Those are kind of my target notes. But the problem is that right away, here comes D. So now all of a sudden it's changing. So we got D and F sharp and A. And then all of a sudden C comes up. Well, now we got C, E, and G, right? So this is all happening. So instead of trying to just follow those all right away, let's start with something more basic, okay? Let's just start by trying to explore this a little bit with our ear before we even get into the logic of these things. So just try and explore it a little bit with our ear. And what I want you to do is over each chord, just play one note. Just play one note. It doesn't matter what. Just play it and see how it sounds, okay? So let me show you an example. And what I want you to notice is when you're practicing this, and again, you could do any string you want. Just give yourself one string, give yourself one note over each chord. And don't worry about the logic of it. We're going to come into that. That's the next thing. What I want you to do is see if your ear connects to that consonance or that dissonance that happens when you hit a note that is correct in terms of its harmony connecting to the chord. And sometimes it doesn't. Like when I stayed on that E, you might have noticed that all of a sudden what was happening is that E isn't working great over all three of those chord changes, but if I stay there and I stand my ground, okay, it might become something that is thematic, if you will, and part of the melody that I'm creating, and the ear will go, okay, I get it, because you're trying to tell me that this is really important. There's a vast difference between these two things that I'm talking about, knowing what you're doing and pushing an idea because you want to push it. These two things are vastly different than just moving around and hoping that you land on the right notes at the right time, right? Now, again, don't get me wrong, we do that a lot. But the more we can add in something where we are situating ourselves for a real connection, you're going to feel and you're going to hear how awesome it sounds. Okay, so step one right now, all I want you to do is I want you to kind of screw around a little bit, playing one note on one string, just stay on one string, whatever you choose. We're in E minor or G major, however you want to look at this, pentatonic, diatonic, whatever you want. And just play that for a little while, and when you're ready, come back and let's keep going. If you want to play songs across the entire fretboard, or play solos over different styles of music that people will love because they sound great and look effortless, and ultimately have more fun playing guitar and have the confidence to jam with fellow musicians, then you're going to want to pay very close attention to this message. Because you're about to discover a simple way to play songs and solos across the fretboard that sounds amazing and looks so effortless that people's jaws will drop because they can't believe how well you're playing, without spending hours of your time learning confusing music theory. My name is Steve Stine, and I'm a guitar player just like you. I've always known the fretboard was a big deal, but was kind of overwhelming. I've been teaching guitar since 1987, and I just turned 51. Maybe it's my age or something, but I never really got how some people can learn the fretboard by memorizing diagrams. And I've tried all kinds of stuff like I'm sure you have, and it sure has been frustrating. Like spending hours with my nose stuck in a book packed with hundreds of fretboard diagrams, or listening to someone who's practically speaking a different language trying to explain exactly what I need to know in a way that I understand it. After spending all that time and money, it never really clicked, and it felt like one critical piece of the puzzle was missing. Plus, I've never felt comfortable trusting that I understand or know how to do something without applying it in the real world. I thought there surely must be something easy that helps you to play songs and solos without having to worry about learning every chord and scale. That's when I dug through all my notes and discovered a shocking fact. You don't need to know every chord or how to play all the modes to play the most popular rock, pop, country, metal, or blues songs. You don't need to know how to thread all the scales together to play solos. I realized that you just really need to know triads. A triad is 3 notes that make up prime chords like major, minor, and diminished. When you can see those 3 types of triads on your fretboard, you'll play songs faster than ever before. And you can easily combine them to create solos. Triads are kind of like landmarks on a map. I use them to get from point A to point B on the fretboard, and I know when I play them, they'll sound great because they're part of the chord and work in any key. When I learned triads, my guitar playing improved tremendously because I always knew where to go. I never got lost and wasn't playing the same old scales over and over again. After a while, I started sharing this with some of my private students. They started getting results too. So I decided to record my exact method and show how anyone can use triads to play songs and solos across the fretboard that sound amazing and feel effortless. And that's how my new course, Fretboard Framework, was created. Here's what you're going to discover. Simple triad patterns that spread out over the entire fretboard so you'll know exactly where to put your fingers. Lots of guitar players seem like they're spending hours practicing boring drills and memorizing every single scale pattern. The good news is you don't have to do that because there are only 3 types of triads you ever have to learn to play the majority of popular songs and play awesome solos too. This 2-hour course is completely online and broken down into short, easy-to-digest videos where I show you exactly how to use triads to play songs and solos across the fretboard. The first few videos explain exactly what a triad is and demonstrate how the 3 main types of triads, major, minor, and diminished, allow you to play creative harmonies and melodies. They're also powerful for playing songs because you'll learn new voicings so you won't be stuck playing big, blocky chords and your guitar playing will sound more interesting. You can even use triad arpeggios in your solos to create melodic lines that don't sound like you're just playing a boring scale. I show you where the triads are across the fretboard so you'll know exactly where to put your fingers. In the last half of the course, I show you how to unlock the fretboard with the cage system and how to apply everything you learned to play over some jam tracks. This will allow you to really wire triads into your guitar playing and help you see the fretboard in a whole new way. You get lifetime access to my Fretboard Framework course so you can go at your own pace, watch the videos again and again until you're ready for more. The videos are short and easy to understand so you never get bogged down with a bunch of useless information that won't improve your guitar playing. Similar good courses cost hundreds of dollars or even $1,000 at Berklee College of Music online. Or you can do like I did and spend thousands of dollars in college learning what I'm going to show you. With all that said, this could easily sell for $1,000. After all, similar courses sell for $14.97. Of course, it won't cost you $1,000, not even $500. Not even $100. You get the complete Fretboard Framework course for just 3 payments of $27.60. Or you can save 70% if you want to make 1 payment of $69. But it gets better because when you order today, you also get 2 exclusive live sessions where you can ask me your most burning questions about the course. And you don't have to worry about making it because they'll be recorded and uploaded so you can watch them at any time in the members area. Another one of the most important skills you can develop as a guitar player is ear training. That's why I've included my Ear Training 2.0 course as a special second bonus. You'll learn the secrets of playing songs by ear and be able to listen to songs and instantly know what notes will sound great for your solos. If you were to buy this on the website a few months back, it would have cost you $99, but you get it free when you order today. And if you order in the next 15 minutes, you'll get my 3.5-hour Essential Guitar Skills course that originally sold for $99. You'll discover all the skills you need to be a well-rounded lead guitar player. This will allow you to play freely across the entire fretboard and get really creative when it comes time to solo. With this course, you're going to overcome problems like not knowing where to start and end your solos, worrying about what scale will sound good for leads, and alternative scales you can use to improvise better solos than you ever thought possible. You won't have to worry about feeling lost or confused because your fingers will be trained to instantly find the right notes without any hesitation. So, to recap, you get my new Fretboard Framework course and all the great bonuses I just mentioned for just 3 payments of $27.60 or 1 payment of $69. And you're protected by our 30-day guarantee. Truly put it to the test for a full 30 days and see if it's right for you. If you don't think it's a good fit, no big deal. Just contact our friendly support team and they'll issue you a full refund or exchange. No questions asked, no receipt required. However, I can only offer this price and bonuses for a short time. After that, the price increases to $199 and the bonuses will not be included. So click the button below and get started today. As soon as you place your order, you'll get a receipt in your email with instructions on how to access the course. You'll also get a spot in the 2 live sessions and immediate access to the Ear Training 2.0 and Essential Guitar Skills bonus courses. If you want a simple way to play songs and solos across the fretboard that sounds amazing and looks so effortless that people can't believe how well you're playing without spending hours of your time learning confusing fretboard diagrams, then you're absolutely going to love Fretboard Framework. And it's simple to get started. You log into the course and watch the first short video, and as you build your skills, you move to the next video, always at your own pace. You can watch and repeat lessons as many times as you need. Remember, this could easily sell for $1,000, but you can have it today for 3 payments of $27.60 or 1 payment of $69. And when you order, you'll also get the 2 live sessions and immediate access to my Ear Training 2.0 and Essential Guitar Scales courses. You'll learn the secrets of playing songs by ear and all the scales you need to improvise solos over any song. The bonuses alone have a $438 value, and you get our 30-day guarantee. But remember, I can only offer this price and bonuses for a short time. After that, the price increases to $199 and the bonuses won't be included. So click the button